Hey everyone! So this card is for my Bellarific Friday challenge, which was a sketch. So for today's card, I decided to use the Uptown Girls Ava Loves to Celebrate image from Stamping Bella. And I inked it up with my Favorite Things Black Licorice Hybrid ink and stamped it onto my CC Designs Copic Quality 80-pound cardstock. And then I'm using one of MFT's Pierce Circle Stacks dies to die cut it. And you can see it puts that perfect little pierced border around the edge, which I absolutely love because it just requires no effort from me. So to color in the image, I'm starting with E21 and E13. Usually I use E50 as my lightest, but with images like this that are so small, I don't see the point in going into adding tons of extra detail when it's just a card. Yeah, some people do and they can create just beautiful effects, but me, I just don't have the time, and I just think it looks just cute as is. So I did the skin with just the two colors and the R20 for the cheeks. For her hair, I used three different colors. I used the YR14, 27, and then EO7. And I love these little images with their curly hair because it's really simple. I just scribble the color on kind of in the same way the hair is kind of scribbled. So really simple, no blending. I just go lightest to darkest and leave it at that, and I think it looks cute. So once I was done with that, I went on and did BG 53 and 57, and you notice I'm trying to add like the lids so that you guys can see the colors, but it only works with my sketch markers. I still have a bunch of the Chow markers, like right there, you can see the lid. So I just took the lid there because, you know, so you can see it, but you can't really see the numbers. So that's the only thing that makes me want to get all sketch markers and slowly replace the Chow with the sketch, is so that I can do things like this and actually just have the lids so you guys can see the numbers. But other than that, I've got a video on my channel from years ago, the difference between the original, the sketch, and the Chow. Basically its size. The marker ink is all the same, and the original has different tips. But that's a whole other video which you can check out. Anyway, so I'm coloring in the image. Again, I'm not being super picky with them. That is one thing I've really struggled with over the years and really need to learn, is they look just fabulous with some color. They don't need a ton of extra work. They're such finely detailed little images that unless someone's gonna like get their nose right up there, they're not gonna notice. And I just think it kind of adds to the whimsy to kind of go to the lines and miss little spots. So that's what I do. And for her dress, I am just coloring the bottom specifically. I wanted to paper piece her dress because I absolutely love doing that with these images. It just gives it a little extra something and is fun. But with an image like this, I was not about to trim out all that frilly little tiny edge. It wouldn't take too long, but I just didn't want to do it. So I'm coloring just the bottom of the dress, and then I'm going to stamp the image again onto this pattern paper from the Basic Gray RSVP pack, which I've used a million times, and I just love it. I love the colors and the patterns and just everything. So I inked up the stamp again with the Black Licorice Hybrid ink, and then stamped it onto this floral pattern paper. This pattern I think is my favorite from the whole pack. And then all I'm doing is grabbing, I just have my Copic multi-liner here, and drawing a really horrible line along the bottom. Like, it just looks bad. But once I fiddle with it a little bit, and then once I turn it off, it doesn't matter. You're not even going to notice. But I was kind of going along the little guidelines here of like the frills of the dress, I guess. And yeah, again, once I trim it all off with my scissors, you're not going to know how bad that was. So just using my scissors, I trimmed along the edges and then made sure to get the little piece where her arm is bent there, and then the top piece. And then just some Tombow Monomulti to adhere it. I put the adhesive like on the main image and then just press the pattern paper onto it, making sure not to put on very much adhesive at all because you do not want that oozing out everywhere. And then once I've got that placed, it's all cute. And she's got this cute little floral dress. And then of course you always need to kind of ground these pieces of pattern paper, otherwise they're just kind of floating there and they don't really seem to fit. So it's just something I always do. I like to take just my W3 Copic marker and just add in a bit of shading along the bottom there and under her arm and whatnot. And then it just finishes off the image and makes it look like it's all meant to be that way. So really simple. And then I just used W1 and W00 for the shading, and that finished off all the coloring. So now I'm going on to the rest of the card, and I'm just using a scrap of some yellow cardstock and a sentiment from my Sweet Sentiment set. And I inked it up with Versamark, and I'm using my stamp positioner so I can just get it straight, just to make it easier to trim out. I'm going to stamp that again with the Versamark, and I'd used my anti-static powder tool before that, just so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to everything but the sentiment. And then, yeah, poured on some Zing, like American Craft Zing. This is the Aqua embossing powder. It's a little bit thicker than what I would normally use for sentiments. I like detail powders for that just because it clings better, but this did a good job. I was impressed. So embossed that, and then I die cut a piece of purple cardstock with MFT's Pinking Edge Circle Stacks Dynamics. It's just now, it just barely peeks out behind that main image there, but I thought I just gave it something a little fun. And then I'm using more pattern papers from that Basic Gray RSVP pack. I'm starting to run out of these papers, which is probably a good thing because I'll end up getting completely sick of them, but so fun. So adhere them to follow the sketch, which will be posted, a picture of it will be posted on my blog along with next week's challenge. And then I grabbed some, this is I think Caribbean baker's twine for my stash, which is an absolute mess. It's just tangled. But I was able to untangle enough of it to wrap around the card front and tape off the top piece, and then the bottom piece I just tied in a bow. And then I'm popping the main image up with some foam tape just for a little something something. And then realized I didn't put the bottom piece of twine where it's supposed to go, so I had to fix that before I finish off the card because that would just drive my OCD nuts. And then shift it over a little bit more again so that the bow isn't getting hidden by the main image. So get that popped into place, and then I'm going to pop the sentiment into place. So I just ripped off, first I rounded the edges with just my little EK Success corner rounder, and then popped a little tiny piece of foam tape there on the part that's going to hang over so that it doesn't get bent. And then add some adhesive, get that into place, and then I'm going to put more foam tape on the back. I went crazy with the foam tape just because this is pattern paper, so it's really thin and it needs a little bit of extra support. Normally I would just adhere this flat to a card, but because I had all that baker's twine wrapped, I just thought it would look a little bit nicer with some foam tape. So I put on some foam tape, like I coated this thing. So that's one thing, I guess that's the only drawback about having that big massive roll that I love is you just don't have, or at least I don't have any qualms of using a ton of it at a time. Like I do not feel guilty. I really don't. Anyway, I'm going to adhere that to my white card base, which is, this time it's the CC Designs Copa Quality 110 pound, which I love for card bases. And then I grabbed the remaining little piece of yellow cardstock and used my anti-static powder tool. And then another sentiment from my Sweet Sentiment set. And this one I didn't bother with stamp positioner because it's not going to matter in a minute. But stamped it with the Versamark and then coated it with that aqua powder, which I really like. It's so pretty. I love the color. I don't use colored embossing powders very much. Anyway, so stamped that, melted it with my heat tool, and then grabbed a smaller pierced circle stacks die to die cut this, just to have that little bit of continuity anyway. So hold it in place with a piece of tape, run it through my die cut machine, and then that's got its little pierced holes along the edges as well. And then I inked up the main image again, this time with MFT Snow Cone ink. And this is where my brain completely stopped. I had the stamp straight on the block, so why I angled it, I do not know. Like, I just wasn't thinking. And as soon as I took the stamp off the paper, I'm like, oh, good lord. Like, what a mess. But thankfully, I had this pattern paper cut and planned to kind of follow the layout on the front of the card. So I was able to cover up that, like, what the bottom area, which is what really shows how crooked it was. So once that's covered up, you can't tell. So only you guys are gonna know. So adhered that, and then adhered the little sentiment, and that finished off the inside. And then of course I had to add a bit of glitter. So I used my Wink of Stella Violet, which is super glitter. Like the colors of the Wink of Stella, if you don't have them, are so glittery. Like they make the clear look nothing like the colors. Like the colors just really pop with the shimmer. I love them. So did that on the bottom of her dress, but the rest I did do just the clears because the colors were too dark basically and would really cover up a lot of the detail. So I just used the clear and just did basically 2 coats of that. This one is almost completely empty. I need to finally start using my new Wink of Stella. But anyway, that was it. So if you've sat through my whole rambling crazy video, I really appreciate it. As always, there'll be a link below to my blog post and all the supplies and all that info listed right below the video in the description box. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.